Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Life is made up of many gorgeous moments. Cherish them all, big and small, with Blue Nile. Whether it's for yourself or a loved one, Blue Nile's unrivaled selection of expertly crafted fine jewelry and statement pieces help make all your moments sparkle. Blue Nile's experts are on hand to guide you, and their diamond guarantee ensures you get the highest quality at the best price. Celebrate a life well lived in the most radiant way and save up to 30% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbif Rugby Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby. Top 14, Pro D2, Nationale, brilliant towns, cities, bars, restaurants, fans and people of French rugby that make it so fabulous, I suppose. Rob, have you had a good weekend? I gather it was a successful one, perhaps in ways that the listeners might not be aware of.
While the top 14 drama was unfurling, and it was dramatic, and I was kind of had one eye on it. I was at Bongo's Bingo on Saturday, and I won a karaoke machine. So one eye on Poe versus Cast, one eye on some quite bizarre bingo calling. It was quite a loose affair, it has to be said, and I even had to get up on stage and do a little performance, which, I mean, there's probably 1,000 people, like, genuinely, that I performed to, Mr. Brightside. So yeah, a successful weekend for me on Saturday. You know, Tigers beat Northampton, Poe beat Cast, bagged myself a karaoke machine. Yeah, what more could you want?
Oh, very good. Don't tell me you chose Mr. Brightside. Surely that was forced upon you.
Obviously not. Because they were like, you got to do a bit of karaoke. And I was like, I'm not sure they're going to have Disco 2000 by Pulp, but
I thought you'd be lining up.
She just started playing, and I was like, oh, fuck's sake.
Lining up a bit of Joe Dassin, Dans les yeux d'Emily. Just to completely empty the place.
Have you got the Onada by Section Palois Choir?
Yeah, fair play. Good rugby derby day for you. Complete opposite for me. Obviously, Cash sadly fell short, and I also watched Exeter implode in the most spectacular fashion at home to Bristol.
I couldn't believe that when you sent that through. Mate. I looked at it and was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was some meltdown, but there we go. Wimbledon won 4-0 against Cardiff, so not all bad news. So I think we're going really well. We've got like 4 games in hand though, from where our pitch got turned into a golf bunker. So yeah, all fun and games. Top 14, you mentioned there the Rosbif derby. We'll come on to that in just a moment. But any did you manage to catch a reasonable bit, particularly in your what I assume was a fairly hungover state on the Sunday?
Yeah, I caught up a bit. I watched a bit in the gym, but yeah, I really wanted them to release the full replay of the Povey Cast game, which only came out this morning. There was one point this morning when I was feeling particularly bored at work. I was like, I could just stick it on. Like, there's no one in this office. I could just, watch Poe versus Cast, no commentary, just the sounds of the stadium. But yeah, decided against it. But I managed to catch it a little bit. I was enjoying kind of while I was out and about in Soho on Saturday night, kind of, we've tweeted. because it's, I get the little notifications on, such and such replied to your tweet, and it's like, oh, what's going on? Quite nice.
It was a funny old weekend. I think there was some great results. There was some pretty interesting rugby at times from what I saw. Nothing demonstrated that more than the two Parisian clubs. So Racing, who I feel like the heat is coming onto perhaps a little bit more than they should. I still feel, well, certainly before this weekend, I felt maybe we're sleeping on Racing a bit. That first half, Racing Toulon 0-0 at halftime was truly the worst demonstration of high level rugby I think I've ever seen. Like it was kind of like a bingo card of every possible mistake you could make. And I wasn't able to screen grab it or record it on my phone, but Bobby Stridgen, Paul Stridgen, sort of former Wales and Lions. I think he's S&C coach. He's now at Racing. There's Hambosi tries to keep a ball in play and just basically fumbles it into touch, and in the background you can just see Stridgen like head go into hands, and it was the perfect summary. That and Serran missing one from in front. Racing ran out fairly comfortable winners, but that's all we can possibly spend on it. It truly was abysmal down in Créteil, and slightly less abysmal bookending the weekend was Lyon's performance. Just saw quite a lot of last night. Very much as you'd expect. Niniashvili to the fore. He
is just wild, isn't he? Like, it's quite enjoyed Mertz commentating on Niniashvili. It was kind of like you could tell he was just enjoying it. But they've got some serious chemistry, like him, Ioane, Kuyu, little bit of Dumortier, a little bit of Birdo. Yeah, they look pretty electric, don't they?
They're looking really good. And I'd rather focus on them. And Kuyu's now scored his 27th try in 23 games or something absurd. I think he got another 2. Yeah, he's playing fabulous rugby. And the other end though, Stade Francais, we spoke about it before, so we don't need to dwell, but they have not far from fallen apart from the team that was so imperious 3 months ago. It's quite a remarkable turnaround.
I think the thing with that is like it was quite a loose game generally, but they just had no accuracy. But the scrum was starting to struggle as well. Like I know Lyon have got a good pack, but for them to struggle at scrum time as well is pretty concerning, because that was an area they were really good, and line out as well. That was also kind of being picked off a bit. I thought both second rows for Lyon great. I'm a big fan of Guillard. The fact that the bright sparks from last year are not so bright now, that's a real concern. They had a bit of a USP, they had a super strength, or a few real nice kind of super strengths, and that those going is not good. I don't think, not a good sign.
No, it's odd. I mean, at scrum time, they're missing a couple, aren't they? I think one of the I can't remember which one it is. He plays on the loose head.
Moses played, so I think it's Paul that didn't play.
They've started a really young loose head Parisian lad, Kofi, I think pronounce his last name, who by all accounts is going to be absolutely magnificent, but he looked a little bit light against Lyon of all teams. But yeah, it's quite some drop off. Be interesting to see how they arrest the decline. It's still early.
Leo Barre was dreadful as well. Some, like basic errors. He was kind of symptomatic of some of the basic errors they were making. Was how Barre went, I thought.
Well, I think symptomatic was a pod favourite Penyasi Dakawanga being picked up by Baptiste Quiu and dragged back into the 22. It was, if you want to see a sort of emblem of how it's going, that was very much it. So Stade Francais now sit only one place above bottom of the league, above Van, who nearly did the business down in Montpellier. 26-24 that turned out. We've had the Seminzico. I've been working quite hard today to work out what the Vunipola derby could be called, and the best I've got is the Vunipola derby.
Like that. Decent.
It is better than the Siminzico, I think.
Yeah.
Billy, very good from what I saw. Also an interview with him in BBC Sport saying he's probably in the best nick he's been for 3 seasons or so. Amazing what getting tasered by 5 police officers can do to the rig. But good signs for. I know Montpellier haven't offered much recently, but encouraging that Van can get something away from home.
It's just so, like, I was in a bit of a Twitter debate on Friday evening about the Montpellier team and the Racing team. I thought the Racing team on paper actually looks quite good. I think that Montpellier team suddenly on paper looks quite bad. I think anyway. I don't know whether I'm being overly harsh, but maybe, you know, there's a little element of like, well, 3 years ago, if you just had Billy Vunipola at 8 and Stuart Hogg at 15, you'd be like, well, that's a good team. But we know those guys have had a lot of injuries more than anything, and they had played a lot of rugby down the years, and that has taken its toll. But also, like, they just seem to be lacking. You know, they haven't really got a 10. At least they've got Reinach back, but it's quite a long way off, like, what it could be. Nucci's obviously great, but there's a lot of just a camera in the second row. Like, how have they not got a genuine bona fide second row for all that?
Yeah, I'm not sure where they're at with injuries, but it looked.
Valemsa went off early a few weeks ago, so I assume he's injured again.
I don't know if I disagree. It looks like a really poor side on paper. I think it just looks a bit confused, and like there seems to be real big sweeping changes week on week. And I know there's always that to an extent in the top 14 with home and away, but it feels really pronounced there. And then you've got that's our man from Argent, Thomas Vincent. Yeah, it is Vincent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who's now kind of on the bench, and you've got Leo Coley starting at 10. It's a bit weird. Would be my summation of it. Feels like, I don't know, feels like Lenny Nucci is kind of holding the whole operation together at the age of 21 or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever he is. He's a fabulous player. And yeah, looks like he's carrying a few with him, to be honest with you.
We could look back on that game and think that's one that got away for Van, though.
Yeah, I think so.
Because Montpellier could still pick up their form later on in the season. They look as directionless as they look at the moment. They might find some direction at some point. And Van will be thinking that was. I know they got a losing bonus, but they might think that was the one we should have won, actually.
Yeah, and you might only need to win 2 games away from home if you turn your home record around. So, yeah. Tough one for them. It's a hell of a journey, that as well, as a lot of them are for Van. Vunipola derby, Rosbif derby. Sadly, for the masses and for myself, it wasn't to be for Cast. It looked like it could have been really. My God,
I was getting really nervous. Because also, like, having watched the highlights, I know why I did it. But on live score, Pi went from 30 to 37, and then the next time I looked at my phone, they were suddenly back down to 30, and Cast had gained another try, and I was like, have they just recorded that wrong? But actually, I assume it was the Atisogbe one getting chalked off. But I was kind of there dreaming of my 20-point margin, you know, being spot on, and then all of a sudden it's like, crap, we could lose this. Good game though. Some really high skill play for both teams. I noticed that Nakarawa was taken off on the 76th minute. He looked absolutely knackered, but it was a hell of a try. Vintage Leone Nakarawa, I think. Just the fact that he was on the end of it.
He set up another one. So that try, he picks the ball up in like the outside centre channel, doesn't he, in the 22? And it's suddenly, you don't really see him coming. And then the guy who receives the ball is Nakarawa. He's a remarkable player. But Poe looked brilliant in that first half. I know we talk about him a lot. Our man, the MBE, Joe Simmons, just looks like he's playing some fabulous rugby.
That little dab kick was that felt like a vintage Joe Simmons move, in that he's looked to go wide. The pass has been shut off, and he's thought, I can still see the space though. I'm just going to dink it in behind. And if anyone was doubting the gas on Teo Atisogbe to get on the end of it, because it's not a perfect kick, but it is into the space. And you need someone as quick as a Gaetan or an Atisogbe to get on the end of that, and it is a hell of a finish.
Yeah, it's an amazing finish. Gaetan as well. I feel he's someone we've spoken about quite a lot. Maybe just because of the quality of some of the other young 13s coming through. It feels 12 months ago, for instance, it felt like he was undoubtedly the next big thing, and just some of the others have caught him up. But he looked brilliant. Like, he feels like he's properly growing into a serious top 14 player.
I think and it goes back a couple of seasons when he was aged 18, 19, the top try scorer in the whole league in a team that finished like 12th or whatever. But he's got a nose for the line. Like, he does. Some players just have that knack of scoring. I guess Sam Simmons had it kind of when he was at Chiefs. Like, some people just seem to score a load more tries than you might think. And he gets like that try where Atisogbe, the first one where Atisogbe does something freakish, but Gaetan just like wriggles his way to the line, and then there's just an arm that extends, and the timing of putting that ball down. So many players get that wrong, and he just gets it spot on. And I think like you see the way he kind of held his width on the second one as well. He just seems like he knows how to score tries. I know that's like a nebulous thing, but yeah, I think he's really. I'm completely biased on him. I do actually, to be honest, think that they're more likely. Well, Deporter got injured, but France more likely to go for a Deporter or Coste, just because it's that kind of big club type thing, maybe. But yeah,
possibly the Stade de Hameaux as well, when it's basking in the sunshine, which as it was when we went a few years ago, it just looks glorious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of in the foothills of the Pyrenees, and is already sold out next week for the visit of Toulouse, which
nice.
Obviously very well supported side, Po, but I wouldn't say a sellout on a Monday before the game is hugely common. So yeah, exciting times for Po. Toulouse, what is there to say really, other than Antoine Dupont came back after 3.5 months out and scored 3 tries in 9 minutes or something like that.
I saw because I kind of hadn't by that time on Saturday evening. I was paying less and less attention to rugby, and I saw on Instagram the next day the hat trick of Antoine Dupont in 13 minutes or 11 minutes. I was like, surely he hasn't, has he? And watched it, and it was like, oh my god, and like the one from the kick from Capuozzo is just like, he's so quick.
So quick.
It's extraordinary. Like, we are running out of things to say about him. The fact that he's to all intents and purposes been swanning around the world. Oh crap, the Airbnb opened today. I'm sorry, I've just realised live on recording that but damn, I should probably look at that. But he's just been on a jolly for like the last 2 months, and he seemingly has had 3 training days, and he's scoring a hat trick and just being that like fit and quick and sharp is remarkable.
Yeah, and I think a critical commentator would say they perhaps weren't he'll score tougher tries, but it's amazing, isn't it, how some people seem to be slightly luckier than others, and how you can be that right place, that right time after that long out. And you're right, the gather from the kick from Capuozzo, who had a fantastic game as well. Someone who I think, understandably, the jury is sometimes a little bit out on, maybe unfairly, because he's in that Toulouse side. So you wonder whether that's where he's getting most game time. He was properly excellent, but the wheels on Dupont is one of those things that you think of. And I think this is, I'm just going into kind of waxing lyrical now for the sake of it, because I love doing it about Antoine Dupont. But it's the kind of the range of skill set is so broad that what one scrum half superpower of being that quick sniping scrum half might be, he's got that as well, and he's probably better than anyone at it. But because he does everything else, you sort of forget, what a player. The other guy, we've spoken about a fair bit. I know you're a big fan. He wasn't perfect by any stretch, but love Josh Brennan. I think he'll be starting to get some international attention properly, won't he?
Again, it's like there's just so many options. It feels like there's a lot of options there. Just at Toulouse alone, you've got the two who I would have as the two first choice
starters
in Flamand and Miafu. Although I guess it is a slightly.
It's just such an
I think he's a back rower
to,
international, though, isn't he? I think
maybe
he's a 6 internationally.
6. He's just such an aggressive carrier and hitter, and it stands out. I like him a lot. Very, very impressive. Could be a tough day for Poe. It could be a cracker, to be fair, particularly if the sun stays out.
Defence, given that is a definite weakness, and Cast were able to expose some of the wide channels. It's not really what you want to be worried about facing Toulouse.
No, definitely not. Now, creaky defence. Okay, a team. I don't think either of us had down as having a creaky defence, particularly this weekend when we were lining up the fixtures. Was La Rochelle going to play Bayonne, but not.
We thought this game would be a drubbing.
Yes, and I think maybe
not the way it went.
Give a bit of context around that with the ground, because I think it's an important footnote.
That they've played 2 games there. Actually, their only home defeat. Well, no, they eventually had a home defeat, but they're in the previous 2 seasons for a long, long time, or 3 seasons. The only home games they'd lost were the ones they took to San Sebastian, and I think it was 30. They conceded like high 30s against Pau the first year. They conceded 50, I think, against Toulon around Easter time last year, and just didn't in both games. Just didn't really turn up. Certainly didn't in the Toulon one, and looking a bit scratchy this season. Not looking particularly fluent. Not looking like they had any real attacking edge. La Rochelle coming into it, looking like they were back to the big bad La Rochelle of back-to-back Champions Cup wins. You've got all your players coming back into form. They're looking fit, and they look the exact opposite of it. They look so slow. I thought that was the main thing that I thought. They just looked slow for certainly for the first 20 minutes. Well, they were 20-0 down after 13 minutes, and that it was relatively even after that for the rest of the first half, but they were just blown away.
Yeah, Bayonne were excellent, and I'd really felt they'd been stuttering quite badly this season. They were really slick, powerful. Obviously, with the English attention, Manu Tuolangi making his first appearance looked really good. He was
from Greg Aldrett for one of those tackles. I think that made
he
press
did
attention, which I think I'm all right with. I think.
It's that sort of area, isn't it, where you break it down. Maybe it was by the letter of the law, but I don't think I've seen him do some looking like he was to cause some damage. I think that was a bit more unfortunate. But yeah, Bayonne were magnificent. They kept La Rochelle at bay until the 73rd minute, I think it was, and then just for the kind of cherry on top, blasted over a penalty try with the last play of the game to put a bit of varnish on the scoreboard. It was hell of a performance, mate. Mangala at 13 was wicked. Both Sagons and Lopez, when he came on, were class. And the guy who's just
that Lopez try comes from it's awesome, but it comes from that is like the thing that gives them the ground is what you might call a vintage Manu Tuolangi run, isn't it? It's like the proper slightly low slung and just rumbling through a bloke and then rumbling through another bloke. Kind of like
almost
New Zealand 2012 game,
using the kind of thigh as his like snowplow almost to get the guys out of the way. And a guy who was monstrous, who has been heavily linked with La Rochelle, so I dare say maybe his agent had been in his ear, was Tavita Tatafi. In just you forget the combined short size of Tatafu and Luke Taggy must be the highest of any two players in their position in the league. It's something else.
I thought the whole pack were great. Like they had real go forward, which is something that La Rochelle were worryingly lacking in. Thought Kasim and the newly dyed bright blue hair of Habel Kufner, which was quite flair, I thought, for a big derby game. They were brilliant. And like Lucas Paulos, a big bloke. The line out with Capillia and Ituria, just like they picked off that La Rochelle line out is it's a complete shambles. I've said it before this season, and they were just getting, it wasn't just bad throwing, like they were just getting picked off. So I know the Bayern line out was brilliant, but they were picking them off so easily. Like it was,
Was Ulten Delan playing?
Yeah. Played the whole game pretty much.
Because he's been so good in that line out when it's worked, when they've been really successful in that 6 role. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How it's kind of fallen away. Ron Gara did not look or sound happy at all, as well he might not be. But yeah, brilliant result for Bayonne. And also, I expressed worry earlier in the year when they got hammered by Toulon that might stop them taking the game to San Sebastian, because that is a weekend I'd like to do. But hopefully this gives it a bit of impetus for another season.
Yeah. Not quite full sellout. I wondered if that was because of the Toulon game, because I feel like the Toulon game was, and the podium
tickets weren't cheap.
No, they weren't.
I had a look. Like, I think the cheapest was maybe sort of €40, which obviously isn't a disgrace, but also when you've got that many empty seats, it feels like you're probably, I don't know, chancing it a little bit.
Similar price at Stade Jean Daget for about half the amount of people.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, brilliant win for Bayonne. And then the last game, Bordeaux, as they have done once or twice already this season, put a slightly changed Perpignan side to the sword. Jalabert, magnificent.
Couple of joke tries in this, just ridiculous ones.
The Penaud one that he sets up for.
It's one of the worst passes, and Samu just runs in, like he's barely having to sprint at some point. Although, tell you, when Penaud did have to sprint, Ali Crosdale tracked him down and having given Penaud a head start. I was like, that must be Crosdale, because I know he's rapid, and it was. But yeah, Jalabert was brilliant. The Luku one as well for Buros, like tap and go on your own 22 and just welly it downfield, and Buros hasn't got anyone about. He's chasing after it, and there must be no one within about 15-meter radius of him.
Yeah, they're playing some special stuff.
Nasty injury for Nicolas Deporter from a very, very valid red card for Nankalevu. Pretty horrible hit, that.
Yeah, he's been so good as well. He's such a fabulous player to watch. It's a real shame, because that sounds pretty long-term, doesn't it?
I think it's cheekbone.
Like a suborbital.
Yeah,
don't know. Hopefully it's not quite as bad as we think. But Perpignan were missing a few, as is sometimes the case. And one of the players they were missing, who had the week off, was former England prop Kieran Brookes, who, delighted to say, we caught up with earlier this evening. So yeah, enjoy our chat with him. Cool. So we're very excited to be joined by current Perpignan and former Newcastle, Leicester, Northampton Wasps, Toulon, England and Barbarians prop Kieran Brookes. Kieran, welcome to the Rosbif Rugby Podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
We're all good. Yeah, dull Monday, wet in London. I'm assuming slightly fairer down in Perpignan.
Maybe slightly warmer, but we've had a bit of rain today that was dragged up from Northern Africa, which was just like a sand rain and just coated all over. No, weather's not the best, but it's maybe a little bit warmer than England.
Fair play. How you I think had the weekend off. It looked like a slightly tough outing of Bordeaux, of done that to a few sides this year. So what's been keeping you busy on your weekend away?
Well, I went away with the team. I was traveling reserve, so got to have a trip over to Bordeaux, which was lovely. The game, not so much. Obviously, they're top of the league, the informed team in the top 14 at the moment, and yeah, it was a tough game for us.
What does the role of a travelling reserve involve? Obviously, you've got to be prepared come, a minute before kickoff that you could actually play. But after that, is it kind of get yourself a picture and help yourself to a few beers and just enjoy the atmosphere, or is it you basically got to pretend you're on your best behaviour and stuff like that?
Yeah, you got to kind of be on your best behaviour. You're kind of there for support of the team. Anything the boys that are playing need, I'll try and help out in like the warm up or in the changing rooms. And then once that whistle goes and you're not needed, you kind of get your kit on and go stand in the stand and watch the team and cheer them on and hope they play the best.
And how's the sort of the mood generally? I know it was a slightly tough start to the season, but you picked up a couple of really good wins. More recently, a excellent one against Rob's beloved Poe, I think, last week with the last kick of the game. Few injuries and stuff coming in. So what's the sort of the gist of over at Perpignan at the moment?
The move's good. I think they had a decent enough season last year. Was only maybe one win away from finishing in the top 6, so they want to build on that. The start last year, I think the first 6 games that we didn't get a win in the first 6 games. So the aim was always to start better than that. Unfortunate to lose at the home game at Montpellier that was played in Béziers. But we've kind of said that we want to try and go this whole season without losing a game at the MJL, and then try and pick up points away. And there's some tough places to go: Bordeaux, Toulouse, Toulon. So we'll pick up a couple of wins away and hopefully try and get into that top 6 and in place for a playoff.
How do you feel about those home games moving to other places? Because obviously, like Béziers is like between Perpignan and Montpellier. It's quite, as a fan or as a neutral, it's quite a cool thing to do. And obviously, we just had Bayonne down in San Sebastian this weekend, and they actually got their first win there. But like, how is that as a player? Do you feel like, we're giving up a bit of our advantage? Are you excited for it? Like, what's the vibe like on those sorts of games?
Yeah, I think it was a bit different for me because I hadn't actually had a game at home yet.
Yeah.
So to get the opportunity to go and play in a different stadium and see a different part of France that I hadn't been in yet, and playing a ground there was pretty cool. And then when we played at home, and I realised just how mental the vibes are and how crazy the fans are and how much they love rugby and how loud they are and kind of on top of you they are whilst you're playing. I realised how much of a difference it makes. When we play at the stadium, it's a different level. Like the noise and the walk in and how passionate the fans are. Yeah, it's crazy, and it makes you so. Not that you're not excited to play already, but it's like you realise how much rugby means to these people, and you really go out, and it gives you that extra 20-30%.
Nice. And how you've just come to Perpignan from Toulon, which certainly from the outside looks pretty. It can be pretty vociferous down at the Maillot. Is it similar? Is it kind of noticeably dialed up at the M Giral? Is there?
It's very similar, I think. From what I've experienced so far, from playing away at Perpignan when I was at Toulon, it was always one of the loudest places I'd ever go. I think the fans here are just as passionate about rugby as the fans are in Toulon, and they want to see the team do well and get back to kind of the glory days that they used to have when they were winning the top 14. So I think they're very passionate about USAP doing very well, and they're mentally passionate, which is great to play in front of.
Yeah, they travel pretty well as well, don't they? Like there's a collection of, I can't remember the exact name of them, but we follow basically a couple of the USAP fan accounts, and they're just like absolutely wild. Like every single away game as well. Every
single one, no matter where it is. It's the commitment is incredible.
And for you, how has not just you've mentioned the team in pretty good spirits, but how's the adjustment been from, you're obviously down in Toulon, Perpignan, two places I've never been. Rob, you were in Perpignan
Been to
last
Perpignan,
season,
yeah.
weren't you, briefly? How's the adjustment been? Different style of lifestyle, the kind of Catalan passion, or very much as you were?
It's a similar sort of lifestyle in the fact that the weather's pretty similar, maybe a little bit windier, but it's that kind of beach lifestyle. It's very nice day to day. I said before, I've got two boys. One's at school over here, one's at creche. The wife's happy. I mean, it's a good lifestyle, yeah. And like you said, very, very. It has a huge influence of that Catalan in it. A lot of the food, the people still speak Catalonian, which is crazy to try and understand because it's almost. I won't compare it to Spanish or French. It's definitely its own language. But hearing people speak that after trying to learn French and then thinking I've got to try and understand a bit of this because this is where it's mental, yeah. But it's brilliant. I love Perpignan. The club's great. I feel very at home here.
Fantastic.
Playing some pretty good rugby as well, I think. Like
it's an attractive style of rugby.
And just while we're talking about the Catalan element, you've somehow got the nickname already. I think within about 2 or 3 weeks of the Catalan cow. Who gave you that nickname?
I think
we've started using it. So
it was meant to be probably a throwaway Instagram story from my agent, and just a bit of a joke. But yeah, I mean, yeah, a little bit.
It works quite nicely. And I guess, like, has there been a difference in your playing role from Toulon to Perpignan? Are you kind of working on different skills? Are you being encouraged to carry ball a bit more? Are you're here to scrummage? Like, what's the kind of direction you're getting from Frank Azema and the coaches?
I think moving from Toulon to Perpignan, I definitely played more, which is great for me. Like, cause I want to play as much as I can. But Frank's very much, he wants us to play what we see. And if I see an opportunity to carry the ball or do something with ball in hand, then he's very much like player instinct, go for it. Obviously my first job is to scrum and maul and make sure I make my tackles. But yeah, the style that we play is attack from anywhere. And if I do get my hands on the ball in a bit of space, go for it.
I guess what kind of winding back to the start of your time in France, you moved to Toulon a few seasons back now, I think from it was Wasps, wasn't it? You were at before. How did, was that as simple as got an offer, take it up, or was playing in France something that you'd eyed up? How did it all come about?
It's something that I'd always in the back of my mind wanted to do. Playing rugby is a short career, and the opportunity to go and play abroad anywhere would be great. So I kind of got the opportunity from Toulon whilst I was at Wasps, and just decided to go for it. My wife was pregnant at the time, which kind of made everything a bit more difficult. We moved over here 5 weeks before she was due to give birth.
Wow.
Which it was just that those 6 months were the most stressful 6 months of my life, but the most crazy and awesome at the same time. Like moving to France, not speaking a word, like Duolingo. I tried Duolingo, but when you come over here and you hear people speaking, you realize that it's just not the same. Coming over here, French hospitals, French speakers, especially to a place like Perpignan where there's not a lot of English spoke. So Google Translate was our friend for the first 6-7 months. But it was great. Like once we settled in, we got our house sorted, we got to know the areas, we had friends here. It was brilliant, yeah.
And how Toulon's somewhere that, obviously a incredibly storied, successful club, but also somewhere where quite a few guys have gone, and I think it's been quite well known, maybe haven't settled in quite as well or as well as hoped. Was that anything you experienced, or was it all pretty plain sailing your time there?
I wouldn't say plain sailing. I think to move over to France, although it's only 2 hour flight away, it's such a difference of culture. It's a completely different place, different food, different lifestyle, different everything. And one thing we said about coming over was that we're just going to throw ourselves into the French lifestyle 100%. And I think if you do that and you embrace everything, the way everything's ran, the fact that loads of shops are randomly shut on a Monday and a Wednesday, and just random things like that. If you just embrace everything, and we just said, if it will be different, it was different, but let's enjoy it. And let's not try and compare it to England, because England's England and France is France. And yeah, we just jumped in, learning the language, still trying to learn the language, but getting there. Our son's speaking French, speaks more French than me from school, which is crazy. But yeah, I think if you just go for it 100%, really try and adapt, which is what we did, that you can find home in France. Yeah.
I guess you were slightly before a few. I know there's been obviously a massive influx of English players or British players generally over to France, and that Toulon particularly now have quite a big English contingent. Slightly, if you're at Perpignan, do you feel like a bit of a father figure for guys coming over, or do you feel like, did anyone kind of, I guess, did the likes of like Carl Sinclair or Lewis Ludlam kind of drop you a line before they kind of made the move or anything like that?
No, not really pick my brains or anything, but I think I moved over a little bit earlier, maybe before what happened with Wasps, Worcester and London Irish. So that kind of maybe forced a few people's hands to move over. But yeah, it's nice now to play against a few of the lads that I used to play with or play against back in England, playing for other teams. It's cool. Obviously, Ali Crosdale's at Perpignan, who was at Wasps. I never played with him. Obviously, I knew he was there. So we got on really well. And there are loads of boys that are English speaking as well here that kind of make life a lot easier. But yeah, no, it's nice to have boys over. Like playing against Will Collier the other week. That was pretty cool. Playing against English pro Harry Williams. Yeah.
A lot of English tight heads in France. It's a bit of a overhit.
Oh, wasn't he? Was he from France?
I don't know how much of the English press you see, but there's just so much around the kind of exodus of English players over to France, and it seems like tight head prop is just such a weird one, because you've got 3-4, I think, in the top 14 alone, and it's. Yeah, and England have got Coley, absolute legend, and then I guess there's some youngsters coming through there, but there's not loads else. So it's kind of, you're looking. I think we're kind of all looking across the channel and being like, "Wow, you got 4 options there that could all do a pretty good job for England." I guess like that moving when you did you was it a kind of like, I'm just going to go to France, like my time with England is gone, or there are other guys that are competing with and actually this is the right time? Was that ever a consideration at all? I know it's for some of the guys that have moved more recently, it has been, but
yeah, I think when I was 29, 30, I was out of the England fold for 4 years. I kind of I had another couple of years on in there where I was trying to get back in the team, and I didn't, which is rugby, and the opportunity to go came up. I just thought, look, if I don't go now and I wait another couple of years, injury, anything could happen, and then I would never have done it. And I just thought the opportunity to come over to France came up, and I just went for it.
Grabbed it with both hands.
Yeah.
We mentioned Toulon a couple of times there. I know we're going back, but one of our real favourite characters in French rugby is Monsieur Pierre Mignoni. And we were keen to ask whether you've actually seen him ever write anything on that clipboard that he brandishes, or is it just there as a prop? Are you able to give us the inside line, or just too secretive?
I've got no idea. I've never paid much attention to it, but maybe tactics or subs or what.
There's nothing on there. There's absolutely nothing on there. There's like. Every now and then you get a close-up on TV, and there's sometimes like a table with like some players' names, but it's completely blank. And then the other side, when you see that, is just nothing. So the fact that you're not aware of it makes me think that it's just for show.
I know he's got one, but I've never looked at it, honestly, hand on heart. I couldn't tell you.
Excellent.
The great mystery continues.
The myth goes on. What was he like to play under? Because he seems, I mean, he's clipboard aside, and some of the throwing of the four-way biro and throwing of the clipboard aside, which we've seen already a few times this season, he seems quite a hot-headed but passionate character. He seems like I feel like I'd want to play for him, but also be absolutely terrified of him.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's terrifying. He's obviously got that streak in him to lose his head a little bit, but I got on really well with him. He's extremely passionate. I think to come back and coach his kind of hometown boyhood club was huge for him, and he really wants Toulon to do really well. So obviously pressure on him, pressure for the boys to do well, and he takes it to heart, doesn't he? If a decision doesn't go his way, or he's crazy, passionate, but lovely bloke.
Good. And can you? I mean, we love him. We're obsessed with him. Can you confirm or deny whether there was an uptick in form at Toulon last season? Was that because he banned smoking at the training ground?
That would have to do with the smokers at the training ground. He never spoke to the foreigners really about anything like that.
Okay, so the rat was a Frenchman then, because it kind of snuck out into the media. But I think it was kind of what I heard on another podcast was that there was a mole within the camp that had kind of snuck it out, and
someone said something. I promise don't know the details, but someone said something to the press, and it went out that way, didn't it?
Yeah. And did quite a lot of the lads smoke?
I think it's a lot on the decline now. Maybe when I first came over, there was a couple, but it's just the culture over here. Like, you walk down the street and you just see kids smoking in the street. It's almost the norm.
I think the astonishing thing was, I don't know if you've been on the train much, but that you stop at train stations and they'll get off and just have a quick dart, like at the platform before it leaves again. It's mental. Is there are there any of the kind of French stereotypes that we might have, or you might have had before you moved over, that are definitely true, and ones that are just completely false? It sounds like the smoking one's a little bit, well, amongst the players, a little bit false, but
maybe back in, when Toulon were winning everything, and it might have been a bit more then, as in around the league, it might have been a bit more like that, but it definitely seems to be like there's no one at Perpignan that I can think of. Stereotypes that may or may not be true. I think the stereotype of French don't like the gym, don't like training, and training's a minimum. That's from the moment I came over. Complete opposite. Like some of the strongest people I've met have been in France, and it's like you got 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that are just like lifting more weight than I've ever seen. They love the gym. Again, maybe that's changed in the past 10 years, and it's become more professional, and there's a lot, like, we do a lot of running, a lot of weights. It's very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Fitness orientated.
Okay, so go on.
You mentioned some of the young lads there. I know, unfortunately, he's just had what looks like quite a serious injury, but you're obviously now packing down with Pasolo Tuolangi, who there's been a lot of kind of buzz around, understandably, and he's still remarkably young. From what you've seen so far, like where's this guy going? We couldn't quite believe when we came out to cast not just the size, but how much the bloke shifted as well. He's pretty nimble. Where's he going, do you reckon?
He's one of the biggest men I've ever seen, and I was over here when he turned 20, maybe just after. he's enormous. Like he's huge. But he's 6'5" and 154 kg or something like that. And he's like, when you look at him, he's not fat. Like he's obviously he's a big man. But yeah, he's rapid. He's got great hands, great feet. Knows rugby really well, which is a rarity sort of for a younger player. Like his knowledge of the game is next level. He's gonna be a hell of a player.
So anyone else maybe we're less familiar with in that Perpignan side you're seeing at the moment, who you think, next year or two we could be seeing up in lights a little bit more from that squad?
Coming through. We've got a young loosehead who's just signed from Clermont, Bergia.
Yeah.
He's only 23, 24, which is youngish for a prop. He's again in the loose. He's so good ball in hand. He's like having a fourth back row. He's going to be a great player. There's a young hooker as well, Victor. He captained the team at the weekend. Unfortunately, when we took.
Yeah, I thought that was quite a relatively new name, but he looked like he had got himself about, and
a great player. Knowledge of the game, ball skills. I'm sure as he gets stronger and bigger, the whole tight part of his game will get better. But
I wondered if the loose head because I think Georgie Berry is certainly when you guys started, it kind of had a bit of an impact, like the two of you guys coming inside. But you've got that kind of other. He's got quite a Spanish name.
Bruce Deville.
No, the really young loose head. He's like
really?
I think
Lorenzo. Lorenzo. Yeah, he is young now, isn't he? I think he's maybe 19, 20.
Yeah,
he's out of the weekend. He's going to be a good player as well. He's massive. But again, not seeing enough of him in game in matches but I'm sure he'd be good. He's definitely big enough.
We I guess to sort of round things out, one of the main sort of reasons we started this up and kind of got into it was to give ourselves an excuse to get out to France and dive into the restaurants, the towns, the bars, all that sort of thing. So what would Kieran Brookes kind of top itinerary either for Toulon, for Perpignan, where are you eating, drinking, coffeeing? Yeah, what do you reckon?
I say Perpignan because that's where I'm at the moment. And I'd say come in the summer. Along a place called Canet en Roussillon, there's an unbelievable strip of beach bars. And I'd say go grab some lunch there, maybe some wine, some food there. Coffee wise, there's a really good place in the centre called Salty Coffee. They do the best flat whites I've had in France in comparison with England. And then I have to mention a restaurant as well. If you went to the beach for lunch, you'd have to go to a place called Vigatan for dinner, and it's a proper Catalonian restaurant run by a huge USAP supporter. The walls are full of shirts, and Johnny Wilkinson's in the shirts in there, and the food is next level. It's unbelievable. I've been a couple of times.
I don't think I found Salty Coffee. I think, or it was one of those things like
it's
the problem with okay, so I would have been there May, I reckon. But like the problem with trying to do a Pro Day game on the Friday and then getting into town for the Saturday for a top 14 game is like the only day you actually kind of get to mooch around town is a Sunday and everything's shut. Like which definitely, especially like coffee, like good coffee is just they're always shut, like Saturday, Sunday. It's like, how do these people
well,
it's just what you're saying.
The afternoon and we say, should we grab a coffee? And on the drive in, we're like, it's a Monday. Everywhere shut. Everywhere. All the coffee shops. So, all right. So we started to wander around.
Yeah. And just in terms of other sites in Perpignan, have you been down to, I guess it would have been the end of the season, you've been down to Catalans yet?
No.
The rugby league.
They finished 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, because I don't know how they did in the playoffs for that. But...
really want to go to one of the games. But I suppose it'll be next season now. But yeah, we're cool to go down there.
I think Sean Edwards goes down every now and then. He lives quite nearby, I think.
Yeah, he lives in Canet, yeah.
You ever see him about? Menacing.
Went for coffee with him the other day because my wife goes to the gym with his wife. and our kids get on. So yeah, we meet up a few times.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I would say any inside goss on Sean Edwards, but I'm not sure I want to ask that question. I feel like he'd track me down and
Oh, he wouldn't tell me anything.
All right. Well, Kieran, look, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure to chat, and hopefully we'll get out to Perpignan. We'll get in some of those beach bars and get into the M Giral at some point. It sounds like a fantastic place. So best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. Welcome anytime.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thanks again to Kieran Brookes for his time earlier. They take on Lyon in a game they'll be definitely eyeing up with interest, I think. Rob, anything else take your fancy this weekend? Sunday night looks tasty.
Sunday night does look tasty, particularly in the context of last weekend's results. I think those are the Perpignan one is an interesting one just for the kind of can Perpignan's home record, kind of as Brooksy was saying, having a bit of pride in their home games. Lyon, where are they at with their away games? We don't know. Personally, obviously the Pau v Toulouse one is pretty big. Yeah, we're leaning towards quite a few home wins, I reckon, next weekend. I think that La Rochelle Bordeaux one is the big one, isn't it? Bit of a local derby. In fact, that is their derby, I think, equivalent for those two sides. Yeah, I'm still baffled by that La Rochelle performance. Absolutely baffled by it. They can't be that poor again. You
wouldn't think so. You'd think there'd be a pretty serious reaction up at the Marcel de Flandre. That's a proper game. Looking forward to.
If Bordeaux win that's like they're in serious position for the league. Like they're theirs to lose.
Well, arguably, it's a long way off, but what it would do is arguably give them a little bit of leeway to rest one or two players later in the season, doesn't it? And to lose away. Yeah,
Jalibert only played 40 minutes on the weekend. They took him off because they could. It's like they seem to have so many players available all of a sudden.
Playing some good rugby for sure. Pro Day was back. It was back in our lives after a weekend away. And I know the one game you really want to touch on, Rob, because it was everything that we love about Pro Day. It wasn't Stade Niçoise getting their second ever win against a very good Mont de Marsan side. It wasn't Colomiers pushing Oyonnax very close down there in the Swiss border. It was our boys.
Wasn't the top of the table clash. Brive versus Biarritz, two great clubs with loads of history. No, it was Soya Angoulême against Provence. A game where 25% of the points were scored within the first 3 minutes because Provence went 3-0 up, 6-all. And we were actually kind of at a cricket social on Friday night, and I turned to you and said, absolute thriller at the Stade Chanzy. You kind of your ears pricked up, and it was like, it's 3-0 at half time. It's like, I've watched the highlights on this, and believe it or not, when I was looking at the highlights earlier, the highlights package on Canal Plus was longer for this than it was for Nevers 28, Béziers 23. It was a 6-alls go. It looked like an entertaining one, and Provence came very close a couple of times to scoring, but the big drama was at the end. Saxby got a scrum penalty to kind of level it, to get it to 6-3, and I'd say with the clock in the red or on 80 minutes, there's a scrum just inside the Provence half, and Provence they're ready to get it out straight away like that. The scrum half can't get it out quick enough. Goes out, whistle goes, but the tight head prop, the replacement tight head prop for Provence, genuinely couldn't be more flat on his stomach on the ground if he tried. Like, it's almost like he's like doing a worm impression. Like, he is flat down, and you think if that's a penalty, which it should have been, Ben Bosker has probably got in the range to get there. obviously the Stade Chanzy was not happy with that. But the 4-minute highlights that I saw made it look like a great game.
Yeah, it was also sort of belied what you'd usually think of a low scoring, any low scoring match where it's like driving sideways rain, mud, squalid conditions. It's like a 4G pitch in like perfectly still kind of autumn evening.
I saw some shots before the game, like of their kind of arty shots of the Stade Chanzy. I was like, God, that looks absolutely glorious. But yeah, bizarre. The beauty of Pro D2, the fact that you can have a 6-all draw from two teams that like to chuck it about. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, elsewhere you alluded to their really important win for Nevers, who beat Béziers. They've had a tough start to the year. Valence Roman got fairly
Béziers
sandy.
were looking good. They came from behind in that one as well. Béziers were ahead for a lot of that. They got off to a great start. So the fact that Nevers showed a bit of minerals to kind of get back into that game and win it is pretty important. I reckon that's a pretty key win for them.
Definitely. Yeah, Valence Roman got fairly soundly beaten by Grenoble in a bit of a derby there at the Stade des Alpes.
In the end, it was tighter than it could have been, and then it was back to the back end of last season. Georgi Javakia just running in a brace late on the big Georgian second row, but it was tighter than tighter than it could have been for a long time, I think. Sorry, keep going.
No, you're good. I think Valence Roman feel like I know they're struggling and they're rooted to the bottom, but just finding a little bit of form. Brilliant drop goal in this game as well from about 48 meters. Feels like the drop goal is really making a comeback in Pro D2 this year. Agen beat Dax, so they've sort of righted a slightly wobbly early start to the season. And in second place is a team that I think we both feared for somewhat at the start of the year. Montauban.
Yeah. Just going really well.
Montauban beat Aurillac, I think, probably with form, but they're a point behind Brive at the top. Is a brilliant start to the year for them, given they clung on by their fingertips last year.
Yeah. And with no real signings or any kind of, it just seems to have been a complete turnaround. I don't know what's happened really. Jerome Bosville, 200 games for Montauban as well on Friday. So hats off to him.
Your favourite
player that maybe we are developing a respect for after some early derision.
And then looking ahead to this weekend, there's a few tough ones to call, I reckon.
Brive's a good game, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think particularly given Provence maybe haven't quite been where we'd expected them to be, this will be a really good test for them. The other one I like the look of is the late kickoff. Two sort of grand old clubs. Late kickoff on Friday, Biarritz play Agen. That really stands out. Valence Roman host Montauban. I know we've just talked them up there, but they'll be looking at that for their second win of the year. But frankly, who knows? It's always absolute mayhem, isn't it?
Oyonnax, I need a win. Dax is one they've got to be targeting. Béziers Grenoble, that's a good game.
Is that at the Raoul Barrière, is it?
Yeah. So some pretty tasty looking there. I'm not looking forward to trying to predict some of these results. I mean, not that we're Mystic Meg over here and we get them right the whole time, but yeah, tricky ones generally, I'd say, this week.
For sure. Yeah, should be another good round. We're getting into winter now as well, aren't we? We're getting towards the rainy, the low scorers. Could there be a 0-0 this year? I reckon there might be somewhere. Not quite yet, but who's
going to be bold enough in the predictions to go for a draw? That's the big one. Who's going to call it? Because statistically, or law of averages, there'll be some. So there'll be. I'm going to have to work out what graphic we do for if there is a draw.
One to ponder.
Yeah.
Before we dish up a couple of Petit-Fours, Nationale continued as it does on its merry way. Nothing too aggressive to report. Rouen absolutely hammered Tarbes 68-10.
I saw that.
Bourg-en-Bresse won against Massy, and Carcassonne beat Bourgoin, who are having a real up and down sort of season. And then a few tight ones on Sunday. Narbonne continued really well. They beat Marcon-Baruel 38-26. Suresnes 13-all draw against Chambéry. And Langon, which I believe is just outside of Bordeaux, beat Périgueux by a point. Yeah. The story, as it has been, is at the top of the table looks wildly congested yet again.
I think is that becoming like a catchphrase? Is that like one of those joke lines where you just churn it out every week? Because
what else is there to say?
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, as ever, the top of the table is wildly congested.
Trying to look if there's any like points difference sort of stuff. Rouen are looking like they're pretty strong.
Who's top?
Rouen.
Okay.
Rouen, Chambéry. Okay. Then you got Carcassonne. But there's only a win separating. Langon is 7th and Rouen in 1st. So it is. I'm not lying. It is bloody tight.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we dish up some Petit-Fours to finish off?
Yes.
Rob, what's on your plate? What's finishing your meal today?
Well, the big one, and a game I watched on I watched it on Sunday. I don't know if this is fully confirmed or not, but I have seen it in Charles Richardson wrote about it in the Telegraph. But big news as a Leicester fan, but also a Pau fan, is that Julian Montoya is either confirmed going to Pau or very, very, very strong rumours, and he's turned down a number of other suitors, including Ubebe, who seem to be in the market for absolutely everyone at the moment. But I mean, if you listen to the way they were talking about Julian Montoya and during the Saints game, just his sheer presence is going to lift that scrum and that front row for Pau, which is an area of needed improvement. So, as a Leicester fan, gutted to see him go, but quite excited to see him in top 14 and playing for Pau.
Nice. Quite a lot going on in the front row kind of merry-go-round. So we mentioned it last week, but it sounds like Georges-Henri Collomb from La Rochelle to Toulouse is pretty much a done deal. Some fairly, I'd say, salty words from Ronan O'Gara, which the gist of which was him essentially saying that he sees Collomb as fourth choice, which is one demonstrable bollocks, given that he's usually starting
for France, yeah.
And just I don't know. There's definitely he's a spiky character, O'Gara, right? But there's just I'm not a massive fan of that. But they've since been linked with, as I said earlier, Tavita Tafi, who previously was it seemed nailed on to be going to UBB, but it sounds like La Rochelle might be usurping that, and they could well be building quite a new set of players for next season.
The Bayonne position is he's still under contract, and I think he's got another 2 years. So
has he that long?
It's at least another year. So it's kind of like hands off. He's not going anywhere.
They've also obviously we've spoken before. Le Garrec's going. I think Niniashvili is pretty much confirmed, and another player supposedly they're looking at and courting alongside a few other French teams is Duhan van der Merwe, who is out of contract with Edinburgh at the end of this season.
As well as Damien McKenzie.
Yes, who has signed, right?
I don't know.
Okay.
The other rumour I saw today, which is very exciting, and another player I love because of his time at Leicester, I saw a rumour of George Ford to Clermont to replace Benjamin Erdebjeta, which I'd love to see George Ford play rugby in France. I think it would be so cool. I think he's like the perfect player for the top 14. I also think he should be the starting England fly half for the next 4 years. But yeah, you can't have both. I'd rather he was at Clermont than Sale. Get him back to Leicester or send him over to France. But quite an interesting rumour, I thought. There's a lot to unpick there. And talking of the front row merry-go-round, there's a really nice tribute to Ben Tamifuna on his contract extension, where he was in the crowd at Stade Chaban-Delmas with giant cardboard cutouts of his face. Like, they were genuinely kind of 6 foot tall cardboard cutouts of his face with the number 27 kind of sprinkled around him as well, to kind of notify the fact he's signed till 2027. It looks like he's loving it.
What a guy. Have you? So we can't, before we wrap up, I suppose, unless you've got anything else, or
I've got one I've got one
lighten the mood
to yeah.
Cool. So one of the big stories, obviously, coming out of French rugby this week is that there's an international arrest warrant out for former Wallaby Leinster player Rocky Elson, who was involved in a syndicate that took over Narbonne before Narbonne was liquidated in 2018, and has come back since, thankfully. But he did an interview in the Irish Times that was also published in the British equivalent, I think, last week. And I've seen a couple of murmurs on Twitter that he was a little bit reticent to do that. And yeah, something is, I don't know if that article has caused it. He's got an international arrest warrant for 5-year sentence. He's being convicted in absentia, and is also on the, I think, owing something like €250,000 for embezzlement. But just this story is not the first time we've covered this, because our one-time honorary Rosbif Reese brought this up on I think the 4th ever podcast, that there'd been some nefarious goings on. And in light of that, I'll try and play it through here. Rob, let me know if you can hear this, but this was a quote to sum up the affair.
Quote that'll really sum it up, by a writer at the time, writing for the local paper, who said, "We have never seen such a secretive president. His media revelations were as rare as those of the Queen of England. He appeared at matches. He appeared the last moment just before matches, pretending not to speak French," which I think is a very Australian thing to do. And then he finished with a slightly sort of small town mafia quote of, "He's left for new mysterious ventures. Who can know where he is right now? He's certainly not reappeared in Narbonne."
So it sounds like the mayor of Narbonne and the small town journalist have caught up with Rocky Elson.
Yeah.
I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know where you find it, but it's a pretty remarkable story.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. For a player that was, when he was in Europe, was the he was European Player of the year they won the Champions Cup. Before I go into lighten the mood, you've got some homework for next week. I don't know when the France squad is announced for the autumn, but I want you to rank in the week off, and we can discuss it next week, the French scrum halves. You can pick as many of them as you like, and listeners, get in touch with. You can go 1 to 20. I don't care. If you want to include Yashvili in there in the pecking order, whoever. I'm happy to hear Pierre Berbizier, however many French scrum halves you want to include, but I want you to rank them ahead of presumably an impending squad announcement. But a little bit of levity to lighten us up. Rugby Amateur, as ever, delivered some good. I think this was it had kind of taken a while to filter through. I think it was from pre-season, but Saint-Livrade in Regional 1, from Saint-Livrade-sur-Lot between Agen and Bordeaux. There was a photo of their Andorran international prop on a stretcher, and people. The story went that people were worried about his health. He was kind of on a stretcher. To all intents and purposes, it appeared he had quite a bad knee injury. He kind of had some stuff kind of covering his knee as well. And his friends were about to take him off to hospital, as you would your kind of teammate in pre-season. And he said, "What have you broken?" And it appeared that his breakage was just a mental one. And the photo is him on said stretcher with a dart, like just laid back, bag in hand. And he just said pre-season was so tough that he had to have a lay down and have a cigarette.
Amazing. Andorran International.
An Andorran International prop playing in Regional 1. So that's 2 below Nationale. It's because Nationale 2 and then Regional 1. Yeah, brilliant. But I just love to see it. As much as Brooksy was saying earlier, you know, smoking isn't a thing with the French boys. I imagine that's at the professional level. I think perhaps in Regional 1, there might be quite a bit more of that sort of thing. But yeah. Right, again, as ever, rugbyamateur.fr on Instagram is just such a treasure trove of brilliant stuff like that. Some nice stuff as well, but some very, very funny stories of the regional game in France.
Brilliant. Okay, I think we're there. Another week is done. Some amazing stuff. The top 14 Pro de Nationale, as there always is. A massive thank you again to Kieran Brookes for taking the time to speak to us. The Catalan cow. Already a massive favourite down there, and I'm sure good things around the corner for Perpignan. You can follow us on Rob. Remind the public.
Instagram, TikTok, X, Threads-ish, YouTube-ish, but we're at Rosbif Rugby on all of them. We're gonna bump up the YouTube stuff. I'm gonna do proper previews on there. That will all be linked on there. So yeah, if you don't have TikTok, that's where you need to go.
Excellent. In the meantime, enjoy your weeks. We will see you next week, and au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.